So, as we've been discussing, we just heard from Donald Trump about the state of the war in the Middle East. This was the scene in Iran's capital today. Thousands took to the streets of Tehran to celebrate the appointment of a new supreme leader. Over a week ago, U.S.-Israeli strikes killed the country's top authority, Ali Khamenei. And today, religious leaders in Iran picked his son as his successor. Mojtaba Khamenei was closely associated with his father, but has never held a formal position in Iran's government. The new leader's wife was also killed in last month's airstrikes. As Iran continues to attack both Israel and its own neighbors in the region, today a top Iranian official spoke about the future of the war under its new leader.
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore because Donald Trump had been deceiving others and not keeping with his promises. What is important for us is the end of this game. And we are ready to continue that game.
Joining me now, Randa is director of the Middle East program at the Stimson Center, a Washington-based think tank. And Bessma Momani is on sabbatical as a political science professor with the University of Waterloo, while she's a fellow with the NATO Defense College. Welcome both. Randa, I'll start with you. What could Iran's selection of Ali Khamenei's son as the new supreme leader mean for the future of this war?
It could mean, it's interesting to look at it. He's definitely a hardliner, and there are debates about whether he's going to be more hardliner than his father, although it's hard for me to imagine somebody who's more hardliner than the late supreme leader. But at the same time, he's coming at a weaker position than his father came into the same role. He doesn't have the military credential that his father had, the political credential that his father had. His father was president of Iran, of the Islamic Republic, before becoming supreme leader. He doesn't have the revolutionary credentials. His father was a close associate of Khomeini, and was part of the revolution that led to the overthrow of the Shah. So he's coming with less ability to monopolize power like his father used to. And so in that respect, that creates space for particularly his main sponsor, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, to have more of a say in the decision-making process. And these are people who have business interest, economic interest, and war is not good for business. And so I think on one hand, he is a hardliner, and he definitely has revenge intentions. After all, they killed most of his family, including his wife and his son, his father and his mother, his sister, his brother-in-law. But at the same time, the people he owes allegiance to more within the system, specifically the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, might be incentivized to strike a deal at some point with the United States.
Bessma, last week, Trump called the younger Khamenei an unacceptable choice for leader. Today, just in his news conference, he called it disappointing, would not confirm that there's a target on the new leader's back, said that would be inappropriate. But still, the fact that this is now the new leader, how the killing of his father was at the hands of the U.S. and Israel. How much of a bad outcome, if you could put it that way, is his appointment as leader for Washington?
Well, I don't know for Washington. I think what you're going to get is continuity from him. In fact, I think that's why he was chosen. In many ways, he sort of was always in the shadows of his father, so certainly can hit the ground running. So if we're looking for, or if the internal folks inside the IRGC and the Iranian political establishment, were looking for continuity and someone who could hit the ground running, Mojtaba fits the bill. In terms of what he means to, certainly I think I agree with Randa in terms of him being a hardliner is probably very, very worrisome for the Iranian people. It does mean he will be repressive to avenge his father's death. In terms of what he means for Washington, I think he is not going to be malleable or frankly interested in negotiating with the Americans. I think indeed he wants to avenge his father's death. That's most likely the case. But we will have to see. There's still early days. He doesn't have the religious credentials that his father had. He's not an Ayatollah. And I think the only perhaps hope or silver lining, if one can say that in this horrible time, is that maybe we might see some shifting of power away from the religious establishment to some of the economic establishment, including the IRGC, which in some way could just remove the religious ideology out of the center of power. But it's really just too early to tell. We're all kind of speculating at this time.
But if you, as you said, both of you said he probably wants revenge, and we just heard from Donald Trump saying he doesn't want anyone running Iran who still wants to develop a nuclear weapon, who still would want to attack U.S., whether the U.S. bases or U.S. assets. What does the fact that now he is the leader mean for the war? Does it prolong it, or is Washington underestimating Iran's resolve? Oh, either one of you can take that. Sorry, Bessma, why don't we start with you?
I mean, I think what we need to watch is the capability. What arsenal does the Iranian regime still have? I mean, if we take Trump to his word, which is really, really difficult because it is frankly all over the place and constantly changing, he makes it sound as though the missiles have been depleted. One doesn't know. It's really not clear how much more they still have in their arsenal. Certainly, there's been a lot of attacks to neighboring countries using drones, so nothing sophisticated there. And we just don't know. I mean, what capability is. I don't think that the so-called argument that the nuclear file or the nuclear capability had been reestablished since June seems really dubious to me, particularly because the centrifuges were supposed to have been severely damaged. But nevertheless, I think what we can expect is really the question of whether or not they still have a lot of arms, in hiding, and whether or not there's going to be, the prolonging of this war is going to really depend on the capability of what's left.
Randa, do we have any idea what's left, or are we left with whatever Donald Trump at this point says what's left?
I mean, I agree with Bessma. We don't know exactly what's left, although they have been shooting less drones. I mean, as Trump said, the rate of drones, the rate of missile has gone down, but this does not mean that they have less. It could be that they are looking for a long game, for a long war, and they are trying to preserve as much of the ammunition they have. But what Trump said in terms of threshold for when he decides that this is it, that they have reached the end state, is the way he put it, when they no longer have the ability to produce weaponry that can threaten the United States, Israel, and and our allies in the region. And so I think it's more about production capacities, and I think they are now assuming, as he put it, that they have taken care of most of the serious stuff in terms of weapons, and now they are trying to make sure that the production capacities are severely degraded. So as Trump said, they cannot produce this weaponry for many years to come.
And Randa, you were in Lebanon last week, where Israel has escalated strikes and advanced troops since Hezbollah attacked over Khamenei's killing. What does Israel's goal seem to be for this second major front in the war?
And in fact, that's now the main concern in Lebanon, is that as the United States wants to wind down its war with Iran, that's going to leave open the space for the Israeli military establishment, particularly the Israeli political establishment led by Mr. Netanyahu, to focus on Lebanon. And now what they have been saying is that they want most likely to expand the buffer zone they already have established, to go further into the Lebanese territory, and to try again to, as I put it, to degrade Hezbollah's capacities and eliminate them as an imminent threat to citizens of Israel that live in the northern part of the country. And so they have been randomly shooting and and they have been, escalating the attacks on residential neighborhoods. They have forced, according to the Minister of Social Affairs, Lebanese Minister of Social Affairs, up to 700,000 people, including more than 200,000 children, to be displaced inside the country. Many of them, if you go around the seaside in Lebanon, you see families basically sleeping on the street, with just some limited covers, and it is still winter in Beirut, and so it has led to a devastating humanitarian situation for the country at a time when the country does not have the resources and the capacities to take care of this humanitarian situation.
Bessma, last week, Iran's president actually apologized to neighboring countries in the Gulf for Iran's strikes on them. But Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain have all reported attacks again today. So why would Iran continue to attack its neighbors?
Well, even in that same statement, the president at the time noted something to the effect that the military are sort of acting very decentralized, that in many ways they're acting like independent cells and making their own judgment call. The question of why, I think, is really trying to exact a cost on the neighboring countries in hopes that they, as allies of the Americans, would put pressure on the Americans to end this war. And I think it's sadly working in that way, although it's obviously really just awful for the citizens of those countries to be bombarded as such. The other reason, too, of course, is many of these countries in the Gulf do have an American presence. They have a military base there. And the Iranians have argued that they are fair game to be targeted. Although some of the Gulf countries have claimed that these bases and these facilities are not being used. There's also been some conflicting report that, in fact, they are. So again, there's a lot. The fog of war in this, frankly, is abundant. It's really hard to tell what's the truth. But I think absolutely the Iranians are trying to get the Gulf countries to put pressure on the Americans. And I'm sure they are, because this is not in their interest to have this war continue. It's really exacting a heavy both political cost, I think absolutely economic one, and even a social one in terms of the perceived safety of the Gulf for investors and for expats alike.
Randa, speaking of economic costs, we've seen the price of oil skyrocket. We've seen the stock markets tank. How much do you think that could hurt America's and Americans' tolerance for this war lasting?
Look, to start with, there is not much of support for this war. It's much more among Republican than Democrat, but still, overall, the latest public opinion poll put the support for this war among Americans in general in the 30%, level. And so, as the costs start impacting the daily lives of Americans, as you put it, fuel prices, contributing to more inflation, contributing to commodity prices. As I think in terms of the stock market, it affects less the average American, because not everybody is invested in the stock market, but still it's an important criterion to look at for people, especially within the base of the MAGA group of the Republican Party. And so I think, these are, in my opinion, the major reasons why we are hearing Mr. Trump talking about ending this soon, very soon. I think, and as he is thinking about, his political fortune and those of his party as we head into the midterm elections in November, I think he has these kind of issues, on his mind. And in my opinion, they are going to be playing a major role in determining his decision to end this up, to wrap up this. But they have to first negotiate, and we have to find a counterpart on the Iranian side with whom we can negotiate. And it's not clear yet that we have that kind of counterpart established and agreed upon within the establishment.
Bessma, we talked just a second ago about the attacks on neighboring Gulf states. What do you still see as a possibility that this war could expand even further in the region?
Oh, I mean, I think this is where everybody should stay awake, or wise, is the fear of a contagion. Absolutely very worried in many ways, both internally within Iran. The fear that there would be a disintegration of the country is very, very frightening. In fact, some of the accounts have been that the Americans have been trying to egg on some of the Kurdish elements in the country that are, again, there's a separatist movement in the northern part of the country. There's also in Baluchistan and the other part of the country, in the east, similarly, a separatist movement. So there is a lot of fissures within Iran along these ethnic and mostly ethnic lines that I think is very troublesome. The disintegration of that state, of course, would bring an exodus of refugees, similar to what we saw in Syria, and that could affect countries certainly like Iraq, like Turkey, like Syria. Again, I mean, this is the fallout of this. And then in the Gulf countries, of course, the fear is there that, of course, the economic situation would unravel. You would have an exodus of expat. Much of the Gulf region are not local nationals. They are, in fact, expats from around the world, that they would perceive the Gulf region not being safe. Then we're looking at the re-immigration of all of these expats, many of them Western, to other parts of the world, and also a great amount of Indian diaspora as well living in the Gulf. So again, the ramifications are not isolated to just Iran. It could really spread throughout the region, and unfortunately, this is the potential for chaos that I think the Trump administration either doesn't care about or wants to induce. I mean, that's not something that we can ignore. I mean, the other, of course, a big elephant here in the room is really the Epstein files and how Trump is related to that. And this has been a very useful distraction from that, of course. But this is the kind of thing that should keep us all awake at night, because if the region is, yet again, going to see this kind of disintegration, internal combustion, it's not going to end well. And too many of us, like Randa and I, who've been following this region for a long time, just want this place to have a chance. There's so much opportunity.
I'm just going to cut in. I have 30 seconds left, Randa. I just want to know, in terms of the diplomatic process, something you're no stranger to in terms of the Middle East, do you see any viable path back to the negotiating table?
Yes, definitely. I think both sides, despite the hardline, harsh rhetoric coming from the Iranian side, I think both sides are interested in negotiating, in getting to an end state. And the only way you are going to get to an end state is through negotiation. And I can see mediators, again, like the Omanis, trying to position themselves as a conduit for this negotiation between the two sides. But before that, I think what we are hearing from Mr. Trump is that he might want to escalate. So in a way, ramping it up in order to wrap it up eventually. And so we'll see.
We have to leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time. Randa Saleem and Bessma Momani.